Mr. Brick stood at the threshold like a lion that had just broken free from its cage. His broad shoulders filled the doorway, and the late evening light flooding in behind him carved his figure into something almost mythic, an avenger sculpted in shadows. His eyes, sharp and piercing, locked on Amy as if he had caught a phantom in the act of trespassing upon the living. Amy froze where she sat, her heartbeat pounding as though drums of war had erupted inside her chest. For an instant, silence hung heavy, stretching between them like a drawn bowstring ready to snap. She had prayed Brick wouldn't discover her so soon, not before she had gathered enough strength to execute the game of shadows she was playing. Yet fate, in its merciless irony, had ushered him right into her chamber. "Amy," he breathed, the name leaving his lips not like a word but a storm breaking. Amy rose from the bed, clutching the hem of her robe, her body trembling, though her face tried to wear the mask of steel. "Mr. Brick, you shouldn't be here." Brick's footsteps thundered across the floor as he advanced toward her. His eyes flickered with rage, confusion, and the kind of longing only a man starved of truth could harbor. "You're alive," he declared, his voice echoing with raw disbelief. "You let me bury another woman. You let me stand over her body and curse myself for failing to protect you." Her lips parted, but words stumbled, clumsy and frail. It wasn't what you think." Brick's hand shot forward and seized her wrist, the grip strong, desperate, unrelenting. He pulled her closer until their faces were inches apart. "Then what is it, Amy? Speak before I lose every ounce of sanity left in me. Are you flesh and blood before me, or am I embracing a ghost?" Her breath hitched. She could smell his cologne, dark cedar mingled with smoke and rain. That scent, once her sanctuary, now pressed her heart against jagged walls. "I had to disappear," she whispered, trembling. "If I had stayed, they would have destroyed me, destroyed us." Brick's brow furrowed. The storm inside him grew louder. "Destroyed us? Who are they? Is this some cruel theater you and Michael have orchestrated? Is that why he paraded you before me like a stranger? Tell me, Amy." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she forced her chin upward, her voice taut. "You wouldn't have listened if I came openly. You were too blinded by Teresa's snares, by your family's venom. I had to vanish, Brick. I had to make you miss me, need me, crave me beyond reason. Only then could you fight for me, for us." Brick released her wrist suddenly as though it burned him. He stepped back, pacing, dragging a hand over his face. His chest heaved like a man drowning in air too thick to breathe. "So you staged your death. You made me mourn. You made me curse the heavens. You made me decide to marry Teresa, thinking you were gone." His roar shook the walls. Amy winced but did not back down. "You think it was easy for me?" She shot back, her voice breaking. "To watch you broken? To watch my children cry themselves to sleep while I hid behind a mask of lies? I died 1,000 times, Brick, 1,000 times in silence, while you held another woman's hand in public, while the world prepared to chain you to her forever. I had no choice." Brick stopped pacing, his chest still rising and falling like a beast at bay. His gaze softened, though his jaw clenched. "Amy, do you know what you've done to me?" Her tears finally spilled, tracing rivers down her cheeks. "Yes, I know, but I would do it again if it meant protecting the truth." "The truth?" His eyes narrowed. What truth could be worth this madness? Amy drew a long, quivering breath. She turned her back to him, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside. The moonlight spilled across her face, casting her in silver glow. She looked like both angel and criminal, a resurrected saint stained by her own deception. "The truth," she whispered, "that Teresa is not what she seems, that Nell is not merely her mother but her architect, that Michael holds the key to the roots you've never dared to unearth, and that I am not merely Amy. I am the daughter of bloodlines you were never told about, bloodlines that your family buried in shadows." Brick stiffened. His breath caught in his throat. The room tilted, and for the first time in years, His unshakable composure faltered. "What are you saying?" Amy turned back to him, her eyes aflame with a fire that could no longer be hidden. "I am the secret they fear most, Brick. And if you love me, truly love me, you will walk away from Teresa, from Nell, from the Aleandro Empire itself. Only then can we save our children. Only then can we claim the life they've stolen from us." Her words fell like thunderbolts. Brick stared at her, his fists clenched, his veins straining against his skin. In his silence, the world itself seemed to hold its breath. The weights of silence. The moments stretched, heavy and suffocating, filled only by the faint hum of the city beyond the walls. Brick's mind stormed, tearing through the cages of memory. His father's iron grip on the family, the council of elders who had ruled North Hill with shadows and whispers, the banishment of Michael, the suffocating expectations of marriage to Teresa. And now Amy, his Amy, claiming she was the daughter of a buried bloodline. His voice, when it came, was a raw growl. "If this is true, Amy, then you've placed me in the crosshairs of a war I may not survive. And you've placed our children in the fire." Amy's eyes softened, though her body remained taut. They were already in the fire, Brick. From the moment they were born. A knock suddenly rattled the door. Sharp, insistent. Both froze. Brick's hand instinctively went to his waist, though no weapon rested there. Just the reflex of a man raised in danger. Amy's eyes widened. "Don't let them see you here," she hissed, rushing toward him. "If Teresa's spies know you found me." The knock grew louder, followed by a voice. "Miss Cleo? It's the concierge. There's a delivery for you." Amy exhaled, shoulders sagging. She gestured quickly. "Hide, please." Brick glared at her but obeyed, moving into the shadowed corner behind a wardrobe as Amy straightened her robe and opened the door. A young man in uniform stood, holding a bouquet of black roses bound with golden ribbon. His expression was blank, professional, but Amy felt a chill crawl over her skin. Black roses, a message from Nell. She knew their meaning. Death remembered, loyalty demanded. "Thank you," she said, forcing her voice steady as she accepted the bouquet. She shut the door quickly and leaned against it, her heart pounding. Brick emerged from the shadows, his eyes narrowing at the flowers. "Who sent those?" Amy bit her lip. "Someone who believes I should still be dead." A shattered vow. That night stretched long, filled with whispers, revelations, and half-buried confessions. Amy told him fragments. The body they had buried in her place, Michael's role, the threat Teresa and Nell posed, the council's obsession with binding Brick to Teresa. Brick listened, every word slicing into him like glass. He wanted to rage, to shake her, to demand the full truth. But he also wanted to pull her into his arms and never let go. He was torn between fury and longing, between betrayal and salvation. When dawn began to stain the sky, Brick stood by the window, his silhouette dark against the growing light. Amy sat on the bed, her head bowed. "Saturday," Brick said suddenly, his voice ablade. "The wedding is on Saturday." Amy's heart lurched, his fists tightened. "If I stand at that altar with Teresa while you live, Amy, I'll damn myself." She rose, her bare feet silent against the cold floor. She came behind him, placed her trembling hand on his arm. "Then don't," she whispered. He turned to her, his eyes aflame. "You think I can walk away so easily? That empire feeds on blood. If I refuse, Teresa and Nell will unleash hell. Not just on me, but on you, on our children. Then let's unleash our own fire," Amy said, her voice fierce now, no longer trembling. "Together, you and me. If they want war, we will give them war." Brick stared at her for a long, endless moment. And then, for the first time since he thought she had died, his arms wrapped around her. Fierce, desperate, unyielding. Outside, the sun rose over North Hill, painting the city in fire. Inside, two souls scarred by secrets forged a vow in silence. A vow that would shake empires. A vow that would burn everything. The air of North Hill was restless. Dawn's fragile light had barely spread its pale veil over the city before whispers began to stir in the underbelly of the empire. News of Brick's approaching wedding to Teresa circulated through the markets, the alleys, and the glass towers like a plague, each retelling soaked with envy, intrigue, and dread. For the Alejandro family, it was not merely a union of two people. It was a declaration of power, a cementing of legacies written in blood. But within the quiet chamber where Amy and Brick had reconciled, a storm more potent than the family's politics was brewing. The morning after, Brick awoke before the sun had fully risen, the weight of the previous night pressing heavily on his chest. Amy lay beside him, her breathing soft and even, though he knew she wasn't truly asleep. Her body was tense beneath the thin blanket, her mind no doubt spiraling with the same thoughts that haunted him. He sat up slowly, his eyes roaming the room, lingering on the bouquet of black roses resting in the corner. Their petals seemed darker now, almost drinking in the morning light, as though Nell's curse had embedded itself in them. Amy's voice broke the silence. "You're thinking of leaving." Brick turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "I have to. If my men notice I disappeared from the convoy last night, questions will follow. Teresa will suspect. Nell will tighten her noose." Amy sat up, her hair falling in waves across her shoulders. There was no makeup on her face, yet her beauty was sharper, more haunting than ever. The weight of her deception had carved something new into her, something more dangerous than innocence. "So you'll return to her? Pretend last night never happened." Brick's jaw clenched. "You think I can erase this?" He placed a hand over his chest. "You think I can bury you a second time? Then don't." Her eyes blazed with quiet fire. "Don't walk back into her chains. Don't let them write your destiny for you. You are Brick Alejandro. Even without their blessing, you command North Hill." Her words struck him, but he shook his head. "You don't understand. The council, the elders, they don't bend. If I defy them, they will unleash every shadow they control. Businesses, allies, the police, even the gangs, they will all turn on me. And when that happens, you, Amy, will become their first target. Our children, too." Amy reached out, grasping his hand. Her touch was soft, but her grip was iron. "Then teach them fear. You've lived your whole life under their weight. Why not let them live under yours?" For a moment, their eyes locked, neither yielding. Then Brick pulled her close and kissed her forehead, his voice low. "You make it sound simple." "It is," she whispered, "when you're ready to burn the world for love." Teresa's preparations. Elsewhere, in the gilded halls of Nell's mansion, Teresa spun before the mirror in a gown of ivory silk. Diamonds cascaded across her neckline like captured stars, and her laughter filled the room with a shrill brightness. "Mother, look at me," she said, twirling. "The most powerful woman in North Hill. By Saturday, I will stand beside Brick, and every eye will bow." Nell sat on a chaise, her lips pursed around a thin cigarette. The smoke curled upward, ghostly and deliberate. "Do not celebrate too quickly, Teresa," she said coldly. "Brick is a man carved from stone. He does not bend easily, and last night I sensed a disturbance." His convoy halted, and his men spoke of something unusual. "If Michael meddles." Teresa's face darkened. "Michael is a nobody. He was cast out. He has no claim." Nell flicked ash into a crystal dish. "A nobody, yes, but a nobody with patience is more dangerous than a king with armies. And I fear his return is not coincidence. He has been circling Brick for months. I'm sure of it. We must keep our eyes sharp." "Mother, you worry too much." Teresa turned back to the mirror, admiring herself. "By the time I am Mrs. Brick Alejandro, no one will dare question me. Not Michael. Not Amy's ghost. Not even the council." Nell's eyes narrowed. "Amy." The name hung like smoke. Teresa rolled her eyes. "She's dead." But Nell exhaled slowly, the cigarette burning down to its end. "Perhaps." Michael's shadows. Across the city, in a dimly lit apartment cloaked with velvet curtains, Michael Alejandro studied a map of North Hill spread across a table. Pins marked territories, businesses, and names, some scratched out, some circled in red. Amy sat across from him, her hands folded, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She had agreed to meet him after Brick left her, though she detested the thought of owing him another favor. "You saw him," Michael said without looking up. "Yes," she replied softly. "And?" Amy hesitated. "He's torn. He wants to believe I'm alive, but he's trapped." Teresa's wedding looms over him. Michael finally raised his gaze. His eyes were sharp, calculating, like a predator studying its prey. "Good. Let the trap tighten. A desperate man makes reckless choices. That's when he's most useful." Amy's lips parted. "You speak of him as if he's just a tool." Michael leaned back, a smirk curling at his mouth. "And what are you, Amy? A saint? You faked your death to manipulate his heart. Do not play innocent. We are all tools in this game. Even me." Her heart clenched. She hated his words because they carried truth. Yet she couldn't let him see her falter. "What game, Michael? What is it you want?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "North Hill. The Empire. Everything our fathers denied me when they sent me away. And I want it with or without Brick. But with him, it will be cleaner." Amy's breath caught. "So you use me to reach him?" Michael's smirk deepened. "And you use me to stay alive. Do not pretend, Amy. You and I, we are cut from the same cloth. Survivors in a house built on lies." Amy stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "No, I am not you. I fight for love, for my children. You fight for power. That is the difference between us." Michael's eyes glimmered with something unreadable, mockery, perhaps, or a hint of pain. "We shall see." The Council of Shadows. That evening, Brick attended a private dinner at the Alejandro estate. The Council of Elders sat around a long mahogany table, their faces etched with years of authority. Each wore black suits, their rings heavy with the family crest. Teresa sat beside Brick, her hand delicately resting on his arm, though he did not acknowledge it. Nell sat at the head of the table, presiding like a queen without crown. An elder cleared his throat. "Saturday must not falter, Brick. This marriage is the anchor of our legacy. With Teresa by your side, the Alejandro Empire will rise above every rival. Without it," his eyes hardened, "we risk division." Brick sipped his wine, his expression cold. "Division already exists. Michael has returned." A murmur rippled through the room. "He is nothing," another elder scoffed. "He was exiled. He has no place here." Brick's gaze was sharp. "And yet he is here, in North Hill, with allies none of US can trace. Ignore him, and you invite a dagger to your back." Nell's voice cut through the murmurs. "Which is why the wedding must proceed. Once Brick is bound to Teresa, the council's authority will be unquestioned. Michael will wither in the shadows where he belongs." Brick set his glass down with a decisive thud. His eyes swept the table, meeting each elder's gaze. "And if I refuse?" The silence that followed was colder than steel. Nell leaned forward, her eyes like daggers. "Then you will cease to be Alejandro." The knight's confession. Later that night, Brick returned to his penthouse. The city lights glittered outside his window, 1,000 eyes watching, judging, waiting. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, but his hand trembled. Amy's voice echoed in his mind. "If they want war, we will give them war." He sank into his chair, closing his eyes, the burn of liquor chasing away nothing. The weight of legacy, love, and betrayal pressed against him until he could hardly breathe. Then his phone buzzed. A message. "Meet me where the river bends. Midnight. Amy." He stared at the message, his pulse racing. If he went, he risked exposure. If he didn't, he risked losing her forever. Brick set down his glass, grabbed his coat, and stepped into the night. The river bend. The river shimmered under the moonlight, its currents restless, its waters whispering secrets to the night. Amy stood there, cloaked in black, her hair dancing in the wind. When Brick approached, she turned, her eyes wet but resolute. "I needed you to come," she said softly. "You always get what you want, Amy." he replied, though his voice carried no malice. She stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. Then hear me. Teresa's wedding must not happen. If it does, we are finished. Our children will never be free. I will vanish again, and you will never see me. Brick's heart thundered. His hands gripped her shoulders, his eyes burning into hers. And if I defy them, Amy, they will kill you. Do you understand that? They will hunt you down until nothing remains. Her voice trembled, but her words were fire. Then let them try. I would rather die fighting for love than live as a ghost in chains. Brick's breath hitched. In that moment, he saw her not as the fragile woman he once protected, but as a flame, unyielding, consuming, eternal. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if the river itself would rise to steal her away. Then we burn together, he whispered, and in that vow, beneath the watchful moon, the fate of North Hill shifted. The city of North Hill woke restless on Saturday. Clouds gathered like dark sentinels above its skyline, veiling the sun in a haze of gray. For the common people, it was simply another day. The markets bustled, children laughed in the streets, taxis honked through the arteries of traffic. But for the Aleandro family, the day was holy, a ceremony dressed not in sanctity but in power. By nightfall, Brick Aleandro was expected to stand at the altar beside Teresa, Nell's daughter, sealing a union that would etch itself into the empire's bones. Yet beneath that veneer of celebration, shadows moved. Amy's return, Michael's schemes, and the council's watchful eyes formed the unseen tremors of a coming quake. And Brick himself, torn between the chains of duty and the fire of forbidden love, was the storm at its center. The bride's mourning. Teresa sat before a mirror framed in gold, her reflection gleaming back with every inch of vanity fulfilled. Her gown, stitched with pearls that shimmered like frozen tears, clung to her curves and spilled into a trail long enough to sweep a cathedral floor. Hair woven into intricate waves framed her delicate face, her lips painted crimson to seal the day with victory. Servants moved around her like shadows, adjusting, preparing, fussing. Mother, Teresa said with glee, by this evening, the Aleandro name will be mine in full. Brick will have no escape. Nell, seated in the corner with her cigarette, exhaled smoke in slow, deliberate rings. Brick may stand at the altar, she murmured, but you must ensure he kneels in heart. Power lies not in vows, Teresa, but in control. Teresa smiled at her reflection. He will bend. They always do. But Nell's gaze remained sharp. She remembered the black roses she had sent to Cleo earlier in the week, and how unease had lingered in her gut ever since. Ghosts had a way of clawing back into life. The groom's cage. At the opposite end of North Hill, Brick stood before his wardrobe, the tailored tuxedo hanging like a noose before him. His men moved in and out of the room, briefing him on security, the guest list, and the council's arrangements. But their words blurred into noise. His mind was elsewhere, on Amy, on the river's vow, on the children who bore both their faces. He gripped the wardrobe door until his knuckles whitened. Every fiber of his being screamed against this wedding, but to refuse was to invite open war with Nell and the council. And war, though inevitable, had to be timed. Sir, his chief of security said cautiously, the Land Rover we traced, the one Michael uses, it was seen near B Hotel at dawn. He's circling. Brick's jaw tightened. Double the guards. And make sure Teresa's side does not notice. Yes, sir. When the man left, Brick poured himself a drink, staring at the amber liquid before tossing it back in one swallow. He had to wear the mask today. But inside, the fire Amy had lit refused to die. Amy's gambit. Far from the bustle of the hotel, Amy dressed in secrecy. No silks, no pearls. Just a simple black dress that clung to her like midnight itself. Her hair was pinned back, her eyes sharp with resolve. Michael leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching her. You're truly going, he said flatly. I told you I would, Amy replied, fastening her shoes. Michael smirked. To what end? Do you believe you'll march into the wedding and claim him like a prize? Amy met his gaze with steel. Not as a prize, as truth. Teresa's crown will crumble the moment Brick sees me there. He will have to choose in front of everyone. Michael chuckled darkly. You underestimate Nell. She will not allow such a spectacle. You may not even step past the doors. Then let her try, Amy snapped. I will not hide anymore. If war must come, then let it begin tonight. For a moment, Michael studied her, his eyes narrowing. Then he gave a slow nod. Very well. Burn the altar, Amy. But remember, fire consumes indiscriminately. The gathering storm. By evening, the hotel glittered like a jewel in the heart of the city. Its chandeliers burned golden. Its marble floors gleamed, and every corner dripped with extravagance. Guests arrived in fleets of black cars, adorned in gowns and suits worth fortunes. Laughter, wine, and whispered speculation filled the air. The Council of Elders occupied the front rows, their presence a silent command to all who entered. This was not merely a wedding. It was the sealing of dominion. Teresa walked the halls like a queen already crowned, her gown trailing like a river of snow. She basked in the admiration, but her eyes searched ceaselessly for Brick, for reassurance of her triumph. Brick arrived shortly after, flanked by his guards. His tuxedo was immaculate, his expression unreadable. He nodded to the council, shook hands with allies, but his mind remained fixed on one haunting question. Would Amy come? The silent entrance. The ceremony began. The music swelled, strings and piano filling the hall with grandeur. Guests rose as Teresa entered, her gown glimmering beneath the lights, her smile dazzling. Brick stood at the altar, stone-faced, his hands clasped before him. And then, as the priest began his blessing, the grand doors at the back creaked open. Gasps rippled through the hall. Amy stepped inside. Dressed in black, she was a shadow among jewels, a ghost among the living. Yet her presence outshone every light in the room. Her gaze was fixed on Brick, unflinching, defiant. Impossible, Teresa whispered, her smile faltering. Nell shot to her feet, her cigarette dropping to the floor. Stop her, she barked. But the guards hesitated, their eyes wide with disbelief. Brick's heart thundered. His world spun. He had buried her. He had touched her cold forehead, cursed the heavens over her grave. Yet here she was, alive, her every step igniting fire in his chest. Amy, he whispered, though no one else could hear. Confrontation at the altar. The music faltered. Murmurs filled the hall like rising wind. The council exchanged looks, their authority trembling under the spectacle. Amy walked slowly down the aisle, her heels clicking against marble, each step a challenge, each breath a declaration. When she reached the front, she stopped just a few feet from Brick and Teresa. Her voice, though calm, carried across the hall. You stand at the altar to bind a lie, she said. But lies cannot hold forever. The guests erupted in whispers. Teresa's face twisted with fury. You dare. Amy's eyes snapped to her, sharp as daggers. I dare because truth does not bow to thieves. Nell stormed forward, her voice venomous. Guards, remove her. But Brick suddenly raised his hand. The hall fell silent. His eyes never left Amy's. No one touches her, he commanded, his voice like thunder. Gasps spread again, louder now, more dangerous. Teresa's face drained of color, her hands trembling. Brick, she hissed. You cannot do this. Before the council, before everyone. But Brick stepped forward, placing himself between Amy and Teresa. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned. I buried a lie, he said, and now I stand before the truth. Fire in the hall. Chaos erupted. The council rose, shouting protests. Guests scrambled in confusion. Teresa screamed, her gown whipping as she turned on Amy. Nell barked orders to guards who no longer knew whom to obey. And Brick took Amy's hand in his, raising it high for all to see. This is the woman I love, he declared. The only woman who has claim to me, and if the Aleandro Empire cannot accept her, then it cannot have me. The hall descended into pandemonium. Teresa lunged, her nails outstretched, but Nell caught her, pulling her back with fury. The elders bellowed threats of exile, betrayal, ruin. But Brick and Amy stood unshaken, their hands clasped, their vow sealed not in ritual but in fire. For in that moment, the altar cracked, and the empire itself began to fracture. The night air outside the hotel was thick with smoke, perfume, and fury. The wedding hall had collapsed into chaos, the guests fleeing like startled birds, their silks and jewels fluttering in panic. Some rushed into cars, others whispered in corners, their voices like daggers sharpened on scandal. Inside, the grand chandeliers still blazed, but the altar was abandoned, desecrated. The strings that had once played melodies of triumph now lay silent, their bows discarded on marble like broken weapons. And at the center of it all stood Brick and Amy, hands clasped, their silhouettes carved by firelight and rebellion. Teresa's shattered crown. Teresa's gown was torn, pearls scattering across the floor like the bones of her dreams. Her once perfect hair now clung to her face in furious strands. She thrashed in Nell's grip, her voice a scream tearing through the air. "You humiliate me before the council? Before the world?" She spat, her eyes like wild embers. "Brick, you will regret this betrayal." Brick's jaw clenched, but his voice remained even. "The only betrayal is forcing a crown onto a man's head and calling it love." Amy squeezed his hand tighter, her presence both anchor and flame. Teresa lunged forward again, but Nell's iron grip dragged her back. The older woman's eyes, though sharp as knives, did not betray surprise. Only calculation, only the cold fire of a strategist already mapping the next war. "Enough!" Nell hissed into Teresa's ear. "Not here. Not now. You do not claw in public like a street girl. We retreat." Teresa twisted, her chest heaving, but one look at her mother's steel gaze silenced her. With a violent tug, Nell pulled her away, her eyes locked on Amy with venom that promised retribution. The council's verdict. The council elders, gray-haired men with rings heavy as chains, remained at the front. Their faces were etched in fury, their voices rising in thunder. "This is an outrage," one bellowed. "You defy the covenant of families, Aleandro. You invite collapse of order," another cried. "The empire stands on bonds sealed in loyalty. Without them, you drag us all into ruin." Brick's voice cut through their outrage, steady and unflinching. "The empire stands on truth, and if loyalty demands lies, then it is not loyalty but slavery." The council roared, fists pounding, threats raining down. But for the first time in decades, their authority cracked. Not because Brick ignored them, but because the room itself no longer listened. Guests lingered at the edges, eyes wide with hunger for scandal. The empire's gods of power had been unmasked as frail men, bickering in the open. Amy stepped forward, her voice rising like silk sharpened into a blade. "You speak of ruin, but ruin was planted long ago. Teresa's hand is not salvation, it is shackles. And the world has seen it tonight." Her words, dangerous and defiant, rippled like shockwaves. Even the council fell into silence, if only for a breath. Michael in the shadows. From the mezzanine above, Michael watched. His figure leaned lazily against the railing, his glass of wine swirling, his smirk unreadable. He had orchestrated threads of this night, whispered in ears, lit small fires. Yet Amy's boldness had surprised even him. "Bravo, sister," he murmured to himself. "You've turned the stage into an inferno." But his eyes narrowed when they fell upon Brick. A flicker of jealousy, or was it hatred, sharpened his gaze. "And you, Brick Aleandro, you think love will save you from the council's claws? No, love is tinder, and tinder burns." The confrontation. The hall emptied, leaving only the players who mattered. Brick, Amy, the council, and Nell with Teresa simmering at her side. Brick faced them squarely, his broad frame unbowed. This union is ended, he declared. If there must be punishment, let it fall on me alone. No, Amy said sharply, stepping forward. If punishment falls, it falls on us both. I will not hide again. Nell's laugh sliced through the air, low and venomous. How noble, how tragic. Do you think standing hand in hand makes you invincible? You are lambs before wolves. Brick's eyes locked with hers. Wolves can bleed. The silence that followed was thick, dangerous, unbroken until Teresa finally spoke, her voice trembling but deadly. You humiliate me once, Brick, and perhaps it is passion. Twice, and it is cruelty. But before the world. She lifted her chin, tears streaking her cheeks. Before the world, you declare war. Brick's voice was cold iron. So be it. The withdrawal. With a sharp gesture, Nell pulled Teresa toward the exit. Come, let the fools have their night. The Empire will answer at dawn. As they left, the council trailed behind, muttering threats and prophecies of collapse. Their robes whispered across marble like the hiss of snakes retreating into shadow. Only Michael lingered. He descended the stairs slowly, his smirk curling. Well, he drawled. That was theater worth the price of admission. His eyes flicked between Brick and Amy. But theater always ends, and the curtain always falls. Leave, Michael, Brick growled, his patience fraying. Michael tilted his head, eyes glinting. Oh, I will. But remember this. When wolves and lambs bleed together, vultures feast. With a mocking bow, he strode out, his footsteps echoing like taunts in the empty hall. The lovers alone. At last, silence. Only Brick and Amy remained in the vast, desecrated hall. The chandeliers above still burned, but their light felt softer, more fragile. Brick turned to Amy, his face no longer the mask of iron but the man beneath. Tired, raw, desperate. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing tears from her cheeks. You shouldn't have come, he whispered, though his voice trembled with gratitude. I had to, she whispered back. I couldn't let them chain you. I couldn't let them erase us. His forehead rested against hers, his breath warm against her lips. Amy, you've lit a fire I can't put out. Then let it burn, she said softly. Let it burn until there are no masks left, no lies left to bind us. He kissed her then, not with the hunger of lust, but with the desperation of a man clinging to the only truth left in his collapsing world. The fire roared and the masks fell. The night's omen. Outside, thunder cracked across the skies, splitting the silence of the city. Rain began to fall, heavy and unrelenting, as though the heavens themselves sought to wash clean the sins of the night. But for the Aleandro family, and for all of North Hill, it was not cleansing. It was the beginning of war. The rain that began over North Hill the night of the broken wedding did not end with dawn. It poured like judgment, hurling itself against stone walls and glass towers, running down the city's veins until even the gutters groaned under its weight. The storm was not just weather, it was omen, it was prophecy, it was war announced in thunder. Inside the Aleandro estate, the marble floors shone with candlelight. Guards patrolled the gates with rifles slung across their shoulders, their boots splashing in the puddles as the storm continued to pound. Brick had doubled security, knowing the wolves Nell commanded would not retreat quietly. Yet the walls themselves felt uneasy, trembling with secrets. Children in the shadows. In the west wing of the estate, Amy knelt beside the twin beds where her children slept. The boy's tiny hand clutched the blanket as though afraid the night itself might steal him. The girl's curls spread across her pillow like tangled gold, her breath soft but restless. Amy brushed their foreheads with trembling fingers. She had seen them only through video calls in the weeks of her staged death, and now touching them felt like salvation. But salvation was fragile, a bird whose wings could break at the slightest snare. They're safe, Brick's voice rumbled from the doorway. She turned to him, her heart tugged by the sight of him leaning against the frame, his broad shoulders still damp from the rain, his eyes soft as he looked at the children. Safe? She whispered, shaking her head. Not while Nell breathes. Not while Teresa believes she was born to wear your crown. Brick stepped closer, his boots silent on the marble. I'll protect them. I'll protect you. That's my vow. Amy rose, her voice firm despite the tremor in her chest. Then you must understand, this isn't only about Teresa's pride. This is about power. About the empire your fathers built on blood. If we do not strike first, they'll bleed us dry. Brick's jaw tightened. He hated strategy, hated the webs of deceit his family had always spun. Yet he knew Amy was right. The war had already begun the moment he tore Teresa's crown apart at the altar. Nell's countermove. Across the city, Nell sat in her chamber before a mirror framed in ivory. Teresa stood behind her, her gown replaced with black silk, her face pale with fury. You let him humiliate me, Teresa whispered, her voice sharp with venom. Before everyone. Before the council. Before Michael. Nell's eyes in the mirror gleamed, cold and sharp. No, daughter. He humiliated himself. And now he has declared war. War is not won at the altar. It is won on marble stained with blood. She reached for a golden ring on her table and slid it onto her finger. The crest engraved on it was not of the Alejandro family but of something older, darker. A society buried in the city's roots. We will summon the order, Nell said calmly. They owe me debts. Their hands are invisible but their knives are sharp. By tomorrow, Brick will not be lord of his own gates. By tomorrow, Amy will not live to whisper her lies. Teresa's lips curved into a smile, though her eyes glittered with madness. I want her dead in front of him. I want him to watch. Nell reached up and clasped her daughter's chin. Patience. To destroy a man like Brick, you don't pierce his heart. You break his children. You take the blood he treasures most. Then, when he kneels in ashes, we deliver the final blow. Marble and betrayal. Back in the Alejandro estate, night deepened. The storm outside grew wilder, thunder shaking the very windows. Guards paced restlessly, their shadows lengthened by lightning. Brick sat in his study, his fists pressed against the desk, maps and documents spread before him. Amy stood behind him, her hands resting on his shoulders. We cannot wait, she urged. If Nell moves tonight, we must be ready. He looked up at her, his eyes shadowed but resolute. Do you trust me, Amy? With my life. Then trust me now. He rose and pulled her close, his forehead pressing to hers. We will not be prey in our own home, but to protect them, his eyes flicked toward the children's wing. We must prepare for betrayal inside these walls. Amy's blood chilled. You mean? Yes, Brick said grimly. Nell has eyes here. Servants, guards, maybe even men I once called brothers. If marble is to be stained with blood, it will not be mine. It will not be yours. And it will not be theirs. At that moment, a crash echoed from the hall. Glass shattered. Then a scream. Brick's head snapped up. Amy's breath froze. The wolves had come. The first strike. The doors of the estate burst open under the weight of black-cloaked men. Their blades gleaming, their faces masked. They moved like shadows, like predators who had been born in darkness. Guards clashed with them, rifles roaring, but the intruders were swift, merciless. Steel struck steel, marble split under gunfire, and the estate's grand halls became a battlefield. Brick charged forward, his pistol in one hand, his blade in the other. He fought like a storm given flesh, cutting through the masked men, his roar shaking the rafters. Amy, unarmed, pulled the children from their beds, clutching them against her as she ran down the back corridors. But footsteps followed. Shadows grew. A knife sliced the air beside her, barely missing her shoulder. She screamed, shielding the children, when suddenly, Michael appeared. Michael's entrance. He stepped from the storm, his coat dripping, his smile cold as he fired a single shot into the skull of the assassin chasing Amy. The man fell at her feet, blood pooling across marble. Amy stared at Michael, her breath ragged. You followed me? Michael tilted his head, his eyes glittering like poisoned gems. No, dear sister. I came because I knew Nell would, and because chaos is the only stage where I thrive. He knelt before the children, brushing their hair with a hand too soft for a man so cruel. The heirs of Aleandro, how priceless. Don't touch them, Amy hissed, pulling the children back. Michael smirked, rising slowly. Relax, Amy. If Nell kills them, she gains power. If Brick protects them, he becomes weak. But if I... He leaned closer, his whisper brushing her ear. If I control them, then the empire belongs to me. Before Amy could respond, Brick's voice thundered down the hall. Michael! Michael turned lazily, his smirk widening as his brother approached, blood still dripping from his blade. Ah, he drawled. The lion returns. Tell me, Brick, are you here to save your children, or to kill your brother? Blood on marble. The estate roared with war. Servants fled. Guards died. Lightning split the sky. And in the heart of it all, beneath chandeliers swaying from the tremors of battle, two brothers faced each other across marble already slick with blood. Amy clutched her children, her heart pounding with terror. Brick raised his blade. Michael raised his smile. And between them, the empire itself trembled. The night of wolves had only begun.